And welcome YouTube to our daily space weather video 2 of 3. This is our YouTube exclusive video. We also stream typically live to Twitch, and we've done so already. By the time you see this, we will have uploaded 2 other videos to YouTube. We saw a brief period of geomagnetic storm conditions and kind of a weak coronal hole wind stream, if you ask me. We'll get to the data on that, also sunspots, coronal holes, coronal mass ejections, and more. This is Earth's magnetohydrodynamic pressure. Earth's magnetic moment from space, modeled in nanopascals, for the past 4 hours. Things calming down here, trying to reach a state of static equilibrium when it comes to the plasmasphere and the Earth's magnetosphere in general. Here's the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground, geospace delta B ground magnetic perturbations. And again, things pretty calm. The coronal hole high-speed stream, it's hasn't been looking particularly exciting. We didn't really see a great signature for it. Anyway, that's the last 4 hours of nanotesla around planet Earth from the ground level. Again, we saw a brief period of geomagnetic unrest and geomagnetic storm conditions there, only lasting about 6 hours between the two. Now we're back to a KP3. Planetary K index is a measurement of global geomagnetism. Next, going to the real-time solar wind. We did see a little dip here in the solar wind density. Looks a little bit more like a coronal hole high-speed stream signature here. So we may see another increase in the solar wind speed as we just did. But at the moment, it's been pretty much of a dud, as if the coronal hole high-speed stream largely missed. And that geomagnetic unrest and geomagnetic storm condition was largely a result of a strong field with a strong negative BZ component, which is this red line. So the field did get up to about 11 nanotesla there, with a negative 8 for the BZ component. And when we see a strong southward component there in the vertical component of the magnetic field, that is much more apt to produce currents on planet Earth. But that quickly subsided, as did the geomagnetic storm conditions. So we'll be keeping an eye on this, as we did see the density drop. Maybe we are seeing another pulse here of high-speed stream. Although at the moment we're only at about 450 kilometers per second. For the velocity, solar wind density here quite low at 3.2 protons per cubic centimeter, a very diffuse solar wind. Next, we'll look at the heliospheric current sheet. Maybe it'll give us some insight into what's coming next. And things are looking pretty chill here. Earth is solidly in a south pole current sheet. Shown here in red. Okay, let's try that again. There's your south pole current sheet. Here's a north pole current sheet. And let's take a look at the GOES magnetometers. And these spiky readings here are typically associated with coronal hole high-speed streams. If you see that return to a more smooth curve, that means the coronal hole high-speed stream is over. Here's your line of sight view of the current sheet, the line of sight ecliptic plane field plot. Solar activity has dropped, so radio flux now down to 124 solar flux units. Sunspot number has dropped a little bit. We'll get to that momentarily. First, the coronal hole line of sight plot, as coronal holes are our next order of business. So coronal holes show us the solar polar field reversal cycle, and you can see the south pole here in the process of migrating to the north, and you can see some evidence of the vice versa north pole moving to the south here. The sun's B field is shown in blue, south pole coronal holes shown in red, north pole coronal holes shown in green. And here's 193 angstroms, one of the better wavelengths to view coronal holes from the SDO. And we're not seeing very many at the moment. Activity in general here has dropped a bit in the past few days. So let's move on to sunspots. as we've had a number of flares in the past 4 days, about 4 M-class flares. And as we forecasted, when these sunspot groups get closer to the limb, they are more likely to produce large flares. Yes, there's a physics explanation for it. You can see the sunspot number has dropped here a little bit, and I would say the likelihood of flares is a little bit higher than the probability shown here on the flare monitor. We may still see some more large flares as these sunspots are still not set around the limb. Sunspot 2995 still visible, but the sunspot number is dropping here in the past couple of days. So taking a look at this visually, we'll zoom in a little bit here. That's yesterday and today in 1700 angstroms. So really a reduction of sunspots and solar activity in general. There were coronal mass ejections. We'll talk about them and where they're likely headed. First, take a moment to press like and subscribe. The Smash team appreciates it. Shout out to Henry and Al of Mr. Keebler. Make sure you subscribe to Mr. Keebler's channel. Press that notification bell so you see when we put up videos, maybe. And make sure you follow us on other social media. Again, check out our homepage. We'll get to that momentarily. We are also on BitChute, thanks to our BitChute subscribers. Make sure you don't only view the videos on BitChute. This one was a YouTube exclusive. We've been putting our meteorology segments over there exclusively. And I would invite all of you to Mensa, which stands for Make Earth Not Suck Again. If you notice, Earth has been sucking the past 2 years. Have you noticed it's probably the result of terrible decisions from bureaucrats? Yeah, giant organizations who are unable to get out of their own way, making terrible decisions for you because they don't trust you to be smart enough to make your own decisions. So it's up to you, folks. It's up to you to make Earth not suck again. I'm still waiting on somebody to send us some imagery of the leggings and A-line dress together. That is a great outfit. I want to see it. So pick up some merch, give Smash staff a raise, as she works very hard to do. She's our IT department as well as our social media management. I'm wearing the hat. It's very high quality hat and high print quality as well. We're doing our part to make Earth not suck again. What have you done? We also are on Twitter, and there is a poll on Twitter. If you weren't aware, there is a poll. And the poll question is, we think it's hilarious that we've got less than 250 followers, and the idea that Elon Musk is some sort of savior for free speech is similarly hilarious. What do you think? We've got 1 vote, I think. 1 vote so far. 6 days left in the poll. What do you think? Twitter is the same? Twitter is, quote, fixed, end quote. I think it's hilarious that people think Twitter's fixed. We are also on Twitch, and we regularly stream live. We're not streaming live at the moment, but we did stream a couple videos today. So thanks to our Twitch followers, twitch.tv/smashamash. It's where we do the most live streaming. We do also stream occasionally live on YouTube. If you want to support us via subscription services, become a member of the Smash team at the gold or silver level. The gold annual paid-up subscription level is the best value. Smashamash.com/Smash team. You can find links on our homepage about that. Welcome to the Neo Renaissance. You can also find links to our social media. You can still donate via Patreon or PayPal. We've got a Facebook page. There's a Discord chat that has a permanent invite link there right on our homepage at smashamash.com. Again, welcome to the Neo Renaissance. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists despite the pathetic censorship on the YouTube platform. Smashamash.com, doing our part to make Earth not suck again. So we saw some relativistic particles show up around 11:30 yesterday. That was a result of one of those M-class flares. And they've subsided a little bit here. Probably the polar radio blackouts have subsided as well there. That's a pretty minor proton event. So that was generated from this flare right here, most likely. That one occurred at 7:20 yesterday. And it took about 4 hours for those particles to reach Earth, traveling at about, well, a significant percentage of light. I'll just say that, rather than do back-of-the-napkin math and fail at it. And again, there were 4 M-class flares, including a rapid-fire series just earlier this morning. And here's some fantastic imagery of yesterday and today from the SDO. So you can find this yourself in the Browse Data section. It's 94 angstroms, one of the many ionized iron spectra. It's part of the extreme UV electromagnetic spectrum. A little higher frequency than visible to the naked eye. In fact, you can't even see these spectra from the ground. That's why we have spacecraft to monitor them. This is the SDO, the Solar Dynamics Observatory. And yeah, 4 M-class flares in there, including at least 1 coronal mass ejection. We'll get to it a little bit later in the video. First, a breakdown of the most recent flares. So if you want to see a breakdown of yesterday's flares, watch yesterday's daily space weather video right here on YouTube. This is just the most recent flares from today. So 2 flares came out of this area here. That's Sunspot 2994 as it sets on the limb. Yeah, why is it that the limb is brighter, folks? Any ideas? There are some valid physics explanations about this. Certain people will agree with us. People like Pierre-Marie Robitaille and Mr. Eugene Bagashov. Let's zoom in and slow it down. That was 30 frames per second. This is 15 frames per second. Some wonderful imagery there from the SDO. Again, 2 M-class flares mixed in there. And let's slow it down even more. Here's 10 frames per second, 1/3 speed. There's 1 M-class flare, and there's a second. So rapid succession there, only about 4 hours between those, I believe it was. Yeah, solar flares. They're more likely when we see sunspots around the limbs than when we see sunspots right in the center of the sun facing the Earth. An indication that condensed matter, not gaseous plasma, is what comprises stars. It's pretty serious, and the implications of it force the rewriting of astrophysics, cosmology, and indeed geology. Continuing on to provide a little bit of orientation. Here's what's going on above my head. We've got Saturn, Mars, and Jupiter high in the sky, and the moon rising just ahead of the sun. Happy New Moon Day. Here's a solar system forecast from theplanetstoday.com. New moon, my favorite phase. All of our reverse werewolves slept well last night and will have a great productive day and be happy, lovely members of society instead of idiots staying out all night and consuming human flesh. Let's do a 1-week forecast. Shout out once again to all my reverse werewolves. There's where things will be in a week. We'll have a crescent waxing on the 7th of May. As all the planets are orienting on one side of the sun, which doesn't mean you're going to die. The planets aren't going to kill you. Last but not least, some coronagraph imagery. We're going to look at stereo A and the Soho-Lasco C3, which is located at Lagrange 1, stereo A located out here at Lagrange 5, which puts Earth off to your right from stereo A's perspective. There is some argument here over whether this coronal mass ejection is earthly directed or not. I think there could be an Earth component, an Earth-directed component, but if so, it's going to be quite minor, because most of the ejecta looks like it will miss to the northwest. So shout out to Tamitha Scove. She thinks there's a more likely Earth strike than I do. She is what you'd call a plucky optimist, because she wants all the plasma to strike the Earth. I'm just neutral on it. I'm more of a pragmatist. Anyway, there may be an slightly Earth-directed component there. I don't think it'll cause a huge signal, but based on the current conditions, if it does, it may be quite detectable. That's where we'll have to close out the daily space weather video. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Once again, congratulations on realizing the channel exists, and may that solar wind be at your back. Opinions expressed in this video, not necessarily the opinions of Smash News Network, least busted name in news.